All right, so today was the day that we got our results for our experiment from Monday. So I'm just going to go through them. Student L, this is her control plate that she put her fingers down in before washing her hands, and she decided to use hydrogen peroxide. So she washed her hands with hydrogen peroxide. This is the plate after. We did the 10-second caveat that I put in. So she washed her hands for 10 seconds, dried them with paper towels, put them on the plate. She didn't even touch the plate. I did. Student M, the before plate, she decided to use Lysol. Now, one of the things that happened with the Lysol that was kind of interesting was because she just poured some in her hand and then started rubbing it around, it dried out really quick. Not sure if maybe we should have kept squirting it on her hands for the 10 seconds. Her plate after, student R. Student R is me. One of the things that I did before we started the lab, I went into the refrigerators and everything with no gloves on because I wanted to make my hands as dirty as possible to try and get really good growth. But I put my hands in and then I washed my hands with hand soap. Now, something interesting with the hand soap that didn't happen with anybody else, it stuck on my hands for a while. So I tried to stick to the 10 seconds as much as I could, but I had to kind of rinse it off really well as well. And then there's the plate after. Student S, before, she decided to use hand sanitizer. And after. Now, something else with student S. Student S told me that she'd gone to the bathroom and she'd washed her hands. So my initial thought was, okay, then there's not going to be anything on the plate. But she said she touched her phone and that she figured there was enough bacteria on her phone. Wait till you see. So after 48 hours in the incubator, we took a look. This is student L, M, me, and student S. Out of all of these, student S had the most bacteria on her hands. I came in a close second, followed by student M, and then student L. But when we saw this, we were kind of confused because we knew that she had just washed her hands in the bathroom and the only thing that she had touched was her phone. And to be honest, ew. But one of the other things that came up in conversation today, when she was trying to get out of the bathroom and she washed her hands, the paper towel dispenser, you have to pull the paper towels in order to dispense the next one. When she went with wet hands to the paper towel dispenser, there were no paper towels. It hadn't descended. So now you have that little turn knobby thing on the side to get them to kind of roll. Well, she did that, then dried her hands and left. Whether it was her phone or whether it was the twist knobby thing in the bathroom, we don't know, but this is certainly a lot of bacteria. The second amount of bacteria was mine, here, which I was totally expecting. Because I did touch inside of the refrigerator where we have the bacteria, the door of the refrigerator, which I touch when I've been working with bacteria, all of the things that I was touching, including the plates inside of the refrigerator, I was expecting to have things on my hands. So these are the controls before we used our products. These are the afters. Hydrogen peroxide, there is nothing there. Lysol, still quite a bit. But like I said, it dried out on her hands. My question, my thought is, if we would have kept pouring Lysol for the entire 10 seconds, would that have helped? When we were talking about different ways to disinfect and clean in lecture, we mentioned that alcohol evaporated so fast that it's not necessarily the best antiseptic. I kind of wonder if Lysol is the same way. It has to actually sit. When we use it on a countertop, it usually is wet for a little while after. Hand soap. While the number of bacteria is lower, there's still quite a bit there. Now, does that mean hand soap is ineffective? No. It means that I didn't use it as recommended. Remember, I cut the time to 10 seconds. I didn't wash my hands for 20, 30 seconds like they say to. So is it surprising that I still had stuff on my hands? Not really. Now remember this one that had the most bacterial growth on it? Look, there's one colony. Just one. Hand sanitizer. All of us were surprised by that. Every single one of us was surprised by that. Now, looking at control versus experimental separately is kind of difficult, so let's look at them together. To make a better picture, I turned off most of the lights, so you may not be able to see me. Remember I said that it has to kind of be dark in here? I have 2 desk lamps on my left, but I wanted this to be very, very clear. When you compare the amount of bacteria in the control over here versus over here, this is something else that you need to consider when you're looking at how effective these things are. Student L did not start with a lot of bacteria on her hands. She had some. So hydrogen peroxide, getting rid of the little bit of bacteria she had, isn't really that surprising. Since student M basically had the same, if not more, in her Lysol, why could that be? What could have caused that? What do you think? I told you about the Lysol drying on her hands, and I can tell you that while it was drying, she was still doing all of this business. So what could have done it? If she had bacteria on the backs of her hands, and by the time that she started doing this, she was dragging bacteria from the back of her hand to her fingers, to the front of her fingers where we placed them down on the plate. There are always reasons behind why things turn out the way that they do. Now, that's just a hypothesis. I don't know if it's true. And because we didn't know the results would turn out that way, we didn't do her washing her hands with Lysol for 10 seconds. We didn't know it was going to happen that way. For me with my hand soap, although it doesn't look that impressive, there is less bacteria here than here. And since I only used it for 10 seconds and not 20 as recommended, it might explain why I'm still getting pretty high numbers of bacteria still on my hands. This, to me, is very impressive. The amount of bacteria she had to begin with, and using hand sanitizer for 10 seconds to only have one colony, that's amazing. Does that mean you should use hand sanitizer over soap? No. Hand sanitizer takes whatever is on your hands and covers it. But if you have matter or debris on your hands, it's on top of that debris and not getting under it. So if there is bacteria under whatever debris is on your hands, it won't get to it. Soap and water will. Because as you're washing and rinsing and washing and rinsing, if there is any matter on your hands, It's falling off because of the flow of the water. Out of all of these things, the most surprising to me was the hand sanitizer. When you do experiments like this, you kind of have to look at it from all angles. When you do an experiment like this, there are a lot of factors that you have to consider. You want to look at all of the controls. How much bacteria did I start with? One of the reasons that I mentioned that, student L with her hydrogen peroxide had no growth after using it, which, wow, right? But look at how many bacteria she started with. So you kind of need to look at everybody. Also, when you look at the results, you have to look at what you started with compared to what you finished with. Since she went from a plate that was completely full of stuff to a plate with one colony, out of all of these, I would say hand sanitizer was the most effective within that 10-second window. Lysol that kills 99.9% of germs, according to the bottle, right? But again, why? Science, just in general, is always asking why and trying to figure out why something happened the way that it did. Why did it work that way? Why was the result like that? You have to think past the base level. You have to think more critically than that. This was actually a really fun experiment. I wish you guys could have been here.